started. Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Jane Irrigation Training Series. I'm your host, Richard Restuccia, and today we're going to be talking about pistachio water management in 2022. Now, I love pistachio, so I'm extra interested in this presentation because I do get so much enjoyment out of the nut. But here's the thing about pistachios, right? Not only do they taste good, they grow in areas where maybe you struggle to grow other things. So I think what it does for a lot of people is gives them an opportunity to grow, make a profit, feed their families, take care of a family in places that they might not be able to grow other things. So I think that's a big positive, but making that happen does require some really intricate and well-managed water. And taking us through how to actually manage water for pistachios is Corey Broad. He's a territory sales manager for Jane. He's also a product manager, but he is so much more than that title suggests. He's a certified crop advisor. He's a certified irrigation designer. He was the Madera County Agronomist of the Year, or Agriculturist of the Year, a few years ago. In a very short period of time, Corey has made his mark on agriculture and irrigation in the Central Valley, really where a lot of the United States and world's fruits and vegetables end up. So we're really lucky to have him here today. And if you've seen Corey before, he's very good at these presentations. But more importantly, he is doing these presentations to help his customers and help anybody who's a grower, right? This is what really Corey cares about, is helping people learn to be better water managers. So Corey, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Richard. And it was a great introduction about the crop, and appreciate the words about myself. And yeah, pistachios are really, really fun to work with. It's probably I'll say my top 3 crops that I do enjoy working with. And it's just a really neat tree that can really thrive in some pretty, I'll say, harsh conditions, all things considered, when you look at agronomy and growing crops in those same conditions. So it's always a pleasure to talk about them. And then, as always, to, again, help educate customers and consumers on kind of what we're doing and what our company's offering.
Yeah, and at World Ag, we always have those pistachios in the tent. I always come home a few pounds heavier because I stack them all day long. I love them. But Corey, here is the thing. As we talk about pistachios, I just want to start out with this. There are some people who talk about this, right? Pistachios grow in areas where maybe we shouldn't be growing anything. Is this putting a bigger strain on the water? Is this putting cropland that really should be out of service into service? And overall, is that a good thing? So, man, if we could just talk about that right from the start, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair question, and one that does come up. And I would say that, as somebody who's, again, been in the Central Valley for a long time and been involved in agriculture for a number of years and seen the pros and cons to every decision that gets made, whether it's for agriculture or for urbanization, so on and so forth. I feel that the industry has done a really good job and continues to do a good job. And that'll be some of the information that gets shared today on investing in better processes for growing, better processes for getting that crop to market, and really providing, again, alternatives. I look at, my generation as a millennial, and then now even the folks that are, maybe 10 years younger than me, that are getting into purchasing decisions for kind of what they're eating on a day-to-day basis, and the growing movement for plant-based diets, things of that nature, which is, again, hey, that's the best part of agriculture, is we produce so much food in this country that we're able to feed ourselves with really a wide array of choices, but also the world in that same time. And when I look at it and I say, pistachios being a complete protein, again, kind of follow that same trend of like the almond crop, I just think it's great. It's a healthy food. It's grown here. It's the safest environment to grow it in. I don't think that's a bad story to tell. And then hopefully through today, you'll see some of the technologies and products that we offer and that many of our growers are employing to show you that this is what the industry is going towards. And there's a lot of room to continue to grow, which is hopefully why we can reach more people today. But that technology is here and it's being used.
Yeah, it's great to hear, Corey. And I love your point about protein and the nuts. And if you ever talk to anybody on a plant-based diet, one of the things they always get asked is, "Well, how do you get your protein?" And man, are you kidding? If you looked at the amount of grams of protein that you can consume from nuts, and not only are they good for you, they taste great. So I think that is a really valid factor. And as more people are turning to plant-based diets, we're going to save some water on the other side. So this is really interesting. So so for pistachio water management, are people doing anything really out of the box, things they might be not doing in other types of water management for other crops?
I don't think so necessarily. I just believe that there's ways to take ideas and concepts from other crops and then maybe stretch them a little bit further. When you think about pistachios, again, they kind of line up with almonds just due to the size of the acreage, but also the vineyard market. It's a permanent crop. It's something that I can't, as a manager, a farmer, and owner, decide, well, Richard, we're just not going to mess with these this year. And so that's always brings its unique challenges. So I think that as we continue to look at what we can do with these trees, and in particular permanent crops during dormancy periods where a majority of our rain actually does fall, I think there are some unique opportunities to keep taking these concepts and applying them. Again, looking at most of the pistachio orchards that I visit, I would say that the growers keep their areas very clean. They're very progressive in the technology as far as irrigation equipment they're using. So it's not anything that isn't available in other crops, but I think that it's such a valuable crop and such a great investment that they're able to justify making even further technological investments. And we'll go into some of that.
Yeah, it's really cool to look at all the new technology. I know you have unleashed a lot of new technology with growers in the Central Valley. And one of the things I've seen you talk about before, and I know you're having success with this, and it's soil surfactants.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've done some webinars on them, and yeah, we'll get into that here in a minute a little bit more. And again, it's just another way to leverage all of the, again, efforts that we put in as a company and as an organization that, obviously you're very well aware of, the picture on the screen of our tubing that has the longest warranty in the industry at 10 years, and our PC click tiff emitter, which is one of the most robust emitters on the market and is an excellent value for growers. Why spend all of this time building all these really great products and then coming up with all these great concepts and then not just continue to take it, one step after another? And so I think kind of being able to package all of these things, again, is where we maximize value as a company versus just, hey, here's your stuff, Richard, hope it works well, and call me when you need more of it. We want to be really intimate and involved with the grower and what are we trying to achieve? And then here's what we have to get there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the only thing you left out was next.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, but talking about the crop in general in 2022 and just kind of what we produce overall, I think it's important, and I'm proud as a California agriculturalist to say that we grow 99% of the U.S. pistachio crop on an annual basis. We're looking at about 1 billion pounds of production in 2022, which is good for folks like yourself that enjoy eating them. And then, kind of depending on the year and some of the pricing and the yields, I'd say it's fair to say that pistachios are a number 5 ag commodity in California from a farm gate value standpoint. So we're looking at $2.87 billion in farm gate revenue. So again, great investment for our growers and diversification for our growers. And then perhaps maybe a little more home base for me, but you look at Fresno, Madera, Kings, Kern, and Tulare counties. That's 96% of California's production right there. And then Kern County alone is 42%. So really, really impressive and proud of our grower partners in Kern County and kind of what they're able to do. And again, providing this really for the United States and most of the world. And kind of to the point, you brought up earlier, we're talking about nearly a quarter of the acreage is grown on what it ends up being defined as a marginal soil, based on, structure of that soil, or influences from sodium, boron, so on and so forth, where you couldn't plant an almond tree, or maybe some other field crops. Pistachios can actually still produce at a viable rate, and continue to still be a good investment.
So the 42% in Kern County, is that because we've got a couple big growers down there, or is the climate better in Kern County for pistachios than other places?
Yeah, I think it's a good mix of both. I would say that the grower base down there has continued to diversify, where you think about Kern County traditionally was kind of a cotton capital of the West in a way, and over time some of that ground has transitioned into trees. Again, growers have continued to diversify, and I think like anything else, when you look at these permanent crop plantings, it's actually opportunities for all size growers to participate, because the harvesting equipment, there can be custom harvesters where there's a lot of acreage. And so that if you and I wanted to take some of our family farming operations, Richard, and diversify into the crop, you and I all don't have to go out and buy this specialized equipment. There's probably going to be a service provider close by that can do that for us. And so that growth just tends to compound on itself, because again, people can get involved in the industry without having to buy, again, this really expensive and specialized equipment.
Yeah. Now this is a beautiful shot. Did you take this on the slide, this shot?
Guilty as charged. The
Yeah, no,
iPhone 12 does a good job.
yeah, and talk about a well taken care of pistachio field.
Yeah, this is in Western Fresno County, a grower that I work really, really close with, and has our technology in their field, and has our irrigation equipment in their field. And again, I think it highlights what these growers do day in and day out, and the type of systems that they invest in, and then how they can, again, respectfully make a 1 billion pound crop, and also create $2.87 billion in economic activity on a farm gate level. That doesn't even include, again, allied industries for companies like ourselves, and fertilizer inputs and equipment dealers. It's a huge impact that this industry brings to the Central Valley.
Yeah, 2.87 billion. That's supporting a lot of families. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And so when you talked about marginal soils earlier, I thought it was good to again, kind of hit on this a little bit more. And so this shot here is also taken by me, and this is in Tulare County. This is a field that is impacted not by snow, not by frost. This is alkali, this is sodium, this is, I'll say, marginal soil. When we would irrigate with double line drip, we could get the water down to about 12 inches, and then it would just seal off and just kind of sit under the soil surface, but wouldn't go any further than 12 inches. And you could walk on this ground out here, and it was like walking on cake. Essentially, it was kind of fluffy and spongy. The structure is just not in the best place possible. And so we actually went out and we applied one of our soil surfactants we talked about, Quicken, which is made for infiltration. And we went and applied actually at a fairly low rate, all things considered. This is a 500-acre ranch, and we treated 200 acres of it, the worst 200 acres of it, I should say. And after running a 24-hour irrigation set, there was no standing water in that top portion of the profile. It all worked its way through. And so again, kind of giving us an opportunity to farm some ground that's difficult, but also is going to be an opportunity to help us remediate that soil, because again, things like sodium and some of those constituents, they're going to move with the water. And so if we can get the water moving, now we can maybe start leaching some of that negative constituents out of the soil profile.
That's an amazing story, because as I look at this photo, I think that's a disaster. That'll never recover. But they're successfully growing pistachios in there now.
We're working at it every day. It doesn't come without its challenges. Again, they're young trees, and so there's definitely time. But hopefully we can get some rain, maybe, and then also make some continual applications, and again continue to remediate the soil and get it back to again that productivity level that can be economic for the farmer, can be viable for the environment, and really kind of satisfy all parties.
Yeah. So what was happening was you just weren't able to push the salts down through the soil. It was hitting that whatever barrier.
It was almost too locked up, if you will. It was just tied up. and the structure was so poor, the water could not move through at a reasonable rate. And obviously, we know with the labor challenges, we can't irrigate 2 hours on, 2 hours off kind of scenario. It's, you know, it's got to be sometimes longer sets, and design the irrigation system the best you can, and you use the best products, but sometimes you still can't really satisfy the full needs of the crop. And so again, this is where surfactants and things like that come in.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So if you're in California, in the Western US, or involved in agriculture, you've probably seen this infographic. This comes from the California Farm Water Coalition. They do a great job advocating for agriculture in California and in farm water policy. This is an infographic talking about the drought and in specific some of the areas that are impacted the most on water cuts. So anything in the red is 95%, and then you're going to see some purples in there that are 100% cuts. And I think that, you know, even talking to people recently, some local growers, they didn't realize how bad the northern part of our state was even hit. I think that we're very used to it, unfortunately, I'll say south of Sacramento, and especially kind of in this Madera down to Kern County region, which is where, again, 96% of pistachios are grown. We're kind of used to it. And you talked about water earlier, Richard, on kind of what are we doing as a state? California as a state relies on 40% of its water supply from groundwater. That's not ag exclusive. That's municipalities, and that's going to be industry, and that's going to be agriculture. And so we still have continued work in order to improve that. And looking back to last year, you know, 2021 was really not stellar either from a water allocation standpoint or a rainfall standpoint. And there were significant water cuts. And 2022 is even worse. You know, we're looking at over 600,000 acres of farmland that's idle in California this year due to drought. And when I think about Sigma and the impacts that that's going to have going forward at full implementation, there is a lot of studies that, you know, 1 million plus acres will be fallow in California permanently once Sigma is fully implemented. And so when you think about that, and you think about the impacts that our growers are feeling, that the processors are feeling, and all the people that they hire, and the truck drivers, and even businesses like ourselves that are still, you know, pushing through this drought because we're offering technologies and solutions, the long-term outlook is that basically every year will be this year times 2. And that's what Sigma can do to agriculture going forward if we don't, again, continue to invest in technologies, and then also improve, you know, water infrastructure and, you know, some of the larger scale things that need to happen. But, you know, it's also important to note that the pistachio acreage has doubled in the last 10 years. But that's because, again, the viability of that crop in some of these areas that you can't grow other things in, or at least economically, and also the health trends of our consumers, where again, people would like this shelf stable plant-based product. People saw that 10 years ago and started moving towards it. And so we're looking at about 500,000 acres on current estimates for pistachios planted in California, with about 350,000 of that being bearing at this point.
Yeah, so I like that, the shelf bearing, right? It does have a shelf life that's longer than most plant-based products. You mentioned 100 million acres going fallow or out of production. Is there anything that growers can do today to maybe change that number or reduce that number, or do you feel like that's just going to be the way it is?
I think there's a lot of things that go into that number being what it is. Some of it will be what we decide to do as a state, and maybe even, I'll say, a regional, like Western US on water management from a top level, as far as investing dollars into infrastructure and storage. It will depend on what we do as a society as far as managing our water in our residential units. And then, yeah, I would say from a grower side, it's planning. It's understanding what are your rights, what are your allocations, get involved with your GSA, your groundwater sustainability agency, and then invest in technologies, work with people. I'll be biased in saying, you know, work with certified people, as you know, as you mentioned, I have a few certifications. Work with people that are going to be here for a long time, people who are based in your region. I tell growers all the time, I work where I live. I live here. I'm here to make this situation better. And there's a lot of qualified people out there. I'm happy to be one of them. and just find that person who can really understand the big picture of water, and again, be an advisor. There's a reason that I have an accountant, and it's not because I have, all these yachts and businesses. It's just that this is somebody who knows a lot more about how to do it appropriately than I do. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's a great point, Corey. And we often say, it's who you surround yourself with in your business that makes the difference, right? You can't do it all yourself. And I'm happy to hear that there is a chance still to turn this around, that this isn't a situation that's just going to happen. We do have a chance.
100%. It's not tomorrow. It's not scare tactics. It's just something that can happen if we just continue to go the way we're going. And so with that will be a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities. And I'm optimistic for that. Yeah. So kind of getting into some of the nuts and bolts though of actually irrigating the crop. Again, there's going to be regional differences with permanent crops, really with all but crops. But if you think about the almond acreage, which might be 1.32 million acres at this point, and I just said 500,000 of pistachios. There's going to be some regional differences there. Again, most of that production for pistachios is concentrated from that Madera south. So let's just say a 2-hour drive north to south, and one that I make pretty frequently. And so there are some small differences there. But think about almonds that are grown in Bakersfield versus almonds that are grown an hour and a half north of Sacramento. That's a very, very different scenario, from rainfall to soil type to wind, and then obviously temperature throughout the season. And so it's going to be a little more nuanced there. But when I look at most pistachio growers and kind of looking at what we have to budget on an annual basis, there's usually about 40 inches of water use by the crop. Doesn't mean that everybody applies 40 inches. It just means that that's kind of I'll say a budgeted or accepted number, and definitely a good place to start, and something that you can tailor, again, based on your crop, your situation, and kind of where you are. Another important note is that nearly all pistachios are grown with double line drip irrigation using either inline or punch-on PC drip emitters. We're very fortunate to be able to offer both of those as a company. You can see in the photo there that this is a younger orchard that we have single line out currently with our ClickTiff button drippers online. And then as this crop matures and the water demand increases on an annual basis, we'll kind of throw the second line out, add our additional drippers to meet the flows of that crop and satisfy the needs.
Yes, so Corey, I just want to remind everybody, we do have the Q&A and the chat open. So if you have some questions or comments, put them in there and I'll get them to Corey when it's appropriate. And we already do have a question, Corey, and that is on the emitters, the punch-in emitters here on the supply line. What type of spacing do you normally go with?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the more fun things, and why I enjoy working with the crop is it depends. When you think about punch-on drippers, it really gives you a wide open template on how to work with it. So some of it will depend on what's your flow rate. And I'll kind of get into a little bit more specifics on the next slide. But if you're going and using half-gallon drippers, and you might use 10 to 12 of those drippers per tree, and now you can kind of evenly space that out and kind of think what that build out looks like. I think obviously early on planting the trees, you have to have the water basically, I say, right at the base of the tree. The root ball is going to be so small. You're going to need to keep that tree well irrigated right in that area. So a lot of growers tend to put 1 to 2 drippers right at the base of the tree early on, depending on flow rate, and secure the hose so that it stays there. And then later on, now you can start adding out. I've seen growers that have done like a 2-gallon an hour dripper at the base of the tree. And then on the opposite side, they've gone and they've put from 36 inches off the tree, so 3 feet each way, they've added 2 more drippers. And that's how they've kind of gotten to the 6-gallon an hour number that I'm going to actually talk about right now. And, from what I've seen in the industry, and there's certainly people that have done more and done less, but most pistachio orchards are grown with an application rate of 0.03 inches per hour, which is roughly 6 gallons per hour per tree. And so an example of this, if you use our inline product, like our Amnon PC emitter line, you can do like an 18 millimeter size, a half-gallon an hour, or 0.53 gallon per hour flow rate at 36 inch spacing. And so a common commercial pistachio planting might be 19-foot rows with 17-foot tree spacings. And so if you put this out there with a double line drip, this half-gallon 36, which is again a common product, a common size, something that you can probably find at one of our retailers, or we may even have some in inventory, not this one-off custom product. It gives you an opportunity to still have 6 gallons per hour per tree because of the amount of emitters and the flow rate. So it kind of meets the target of what you would need. If you went and you used 1 gallon an hour click tiff button drippers, like we were just discussing, Richard, you would use 6 of those per tree. And so maybe start with a single line and 2 drippers per tree, kind of, I'll say fairly close to the base of it, or 1 right on the base. And then you can kind of add drippers and tubing as the trees progress. And that's a unique opportunity because you don't end up having to make the full investment for all the polyethylene and all the drippers right away. So you can defer that investment over time. And then also you can maybe irrigate larger areas of land. You can have larger sets early on because you have such a low flow rate. You have 1/6 or 1/3 of what your total rate's going to be. And so early on, it's not that big of a deal because the trees aren't using that much water. So with that also comes, less water, I'll say, wasted, and or less water promoting weed growth and some of these other things that could be net negative. So that's something that we see more and more growers going towards. But also the inline option is still really effective. And that's kind of the picture you see on the left-hand side there. That yes, I also took that one. And kind of going back to that 40-inch mark and kind of where this 0.03 inch per hour discussion is important. That ends up being 1,335 hours of operation on an annual basis when trees are in production. So you think about that, that's really from, I'll just say April to the end of October. So you divide that out, you're talking about probably 48 hours a week, every week for a really long time. So, and that's just the average. Some months are going to be more, some months are going to be less. But if you're not thinking about it that way before planting, or even before an annual basis, kind of a checkup, I would say that's really the best way to start thinking about how to budget water.
Yeah, what a great strategy, Corey, because you're not going to get a return on your investment the first year from your
first 5.
Yeah, so if you can manage those costs,
absolutely,
like you're suggesting, you're gonna save a bunch. I love that.
Yeah, there's just, again, some unique opportunities there. And again, we see more and more growers doing that. That's why we're selling so much of our tubing. Obviously, part of it, again, is going to be that 10-year warranty, but also the quality of that click tiff and the ability of, we have half-gallon, 1 gallon, 2 gallon, and even 3 gallon an hour drippers. So again, with that unlimited option of putting the dripper where you wanted, kind of like the question we got, and multiple flow rates, really kind of gives you this blank canvas as an ag nerd like myself to say, like, how can we exactly design this based on the tree, the soil, and kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So leading into water budgeting, I kind of gave you the, hey, here's 40 inches. Now I'm doing 1,335 hours a year annually per set. How do we build a budget? And so really looking at the crop from a phenology standpoint, on the left-hand side, there's a chart. This is a kind of a crop growth stage for pistachios. This is done by, I believe, Dr. Goldhammer from the UC Extension. It's publicly available online. I actually have a link in one of the later slides coming up for this. Great resource, again, a good place to start. But when we look at pistachios, we think about the crop coefficient or growth curve really being active from April to November based on scientific study. So you kind of look at each month, you can basically budget out what the, and I use in quotations, expected crop consumption is supposed to be throughout each month and each season. I say expected because remember, there's regional differences, and then there's also just annual differences where sometimes it's, we had a mild spring this year and maybe it was warmer last spring, so on and so forth. Those are things that are important to take into consideration, but can still help you start building out what's my water use and how do I budget that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about delaying spring irrigation events. And I say that in that there's more conversation in the permanent crop space, specifically pistachios, almonds, and walnuts, especially the almonds and the walnuts, because they're, again, grown much farther north where they may have more rainfall in the winter. But we may have opportunities, and I say save water, in the sense of don't apply water before we need it, or maybe use more of the residual soil moisture that's present from rainfall. And that's unique, and we'll go into some of that coming up also. In a poor water year, at least from a rainfall standpoint, I mean, we still saw 6 inches of rainfall here in Fresno, that really kind of accumulated its way into the soil profile, depending on, again, your soil type and structure. But again, if we understand that texture and that structure, we can kind of expand our water budget and kind of continue on saving water.
Yeah, wow, that's stage 2 and stage 3. That's a bit of water at that time, but predictable.
Yep, predictable, and again, what we know is what we can manage. If you can measure it, you can manage it, as the old adage goes. And so I left the same chart up here. I was showing you guys some pictures that I've taken throughout this year, and I think one of them is from last year. But this is kind of what a pistachio orchard looks like in March. So you can see why there's not a ton of water use in March. That's why this, stage 1 kind of begins at the beginning of April. It's we kind of start farming sticks for a while. And then this is kind of where we were at the end of April, and then kind of going through into May, the middle of May. And then this is what the nut fill process. Apparently I missed my June trip picture out to the orchard. But nonetheless, you can see kind of the nut filling happening on basically all the nuts in this cluster. So kind of working its way through. And then this is what August of last year it looked like. Obviously we're not there yet. But basically kind of finishing out the nut fill, and then kind of getting close to that, hopefully that shell splitting, and kind of work your way through that in August, and then eventually into harvest, because we got to get those nuts to split in order to get paid for that crop. And so that's an important time. And kind of talking about the budget, if I may, I told everyone, texture and structure is really important to understand in your soil. And I say that it allows you to access the stored water in there with confidence. So again, start with what's your soil type, and then are there constituents or issues, sodium, boron, is there compaction, what's your organic matter level? These are all, I'll say CCA type things, but really just good agronomic practices to understand about your field. Soil tests are great. I recommend them. It changes year to year based on what you grew and what you've put on. So I always recommend getting those. And then going and knowing the rooting depth of your trees. This particular grower here I work with, we dig backhoe pits every spring. So kind of, I'll say end of February, beginning of March, we go and we dig holes out in the orchard in multiple areas. And we see, especially on young trees, how far out are the roots, how deep are the roots, how active, how healthy, and gives us an idea of how big is our trough, how big is our water holding tank, if you will, so that we can kind of understand what do the trees have access to, and then we can again start quantifying how much water they might have available. And then I'd say a final step is have a soil moisture probe installed. Again, we do sell these as a company. It's part of our Jane Logic technology offering. Get that first step of technology into your field, and then now you can start working with a water manager, somebody like myself, to kind of estimate and or calculate that plant available water, and then give you that confidence to start delaying those spring irrigation events.
Yeah, so Corey, you've got a picture here. That's the Jane C3 telemetry unit. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what does that do?
A Swiss Army knife. It allows us to do a lot of things. This particular box in and of itself is unique in that it's cellular and radio. It connects to a soil moisture probe. It's also connected in this case to a weather station to giving you all of that data. It can do automation as far as turning off and on pumps, opening and closing valves. There's probably 11 features that I haven't mentioned about it. What's unique about us is that it's something that you can buy today and really invest in with confidence, in that if you put one out today just doing soil moisture, you could add a weather station to it later, and it's just the cost of the weather station. And then if you said, you know what, Corey, I'm ready to automate my pump now, and it's, this box was located next to your pump and still connected to a soil moisture probe, you can do that. And so you could really build off this platform. It's a chassis that allows you to do a lot of customization.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's what actually allows you to see what's going on in your field on your laptop, your desktop, your iPad, your phone, whatever.
I'm a big iPhone guy because how much I drive and where I'm at. But yeah, easily accessible, basically with an app on your phone. I can check and see what's going on quickly, maybe answer some customer questions on the fly. And then, yeah, obviously it's a little bit easier to dive in on desktop, especially with multiple screens later. But yeah, it's readily available from any internet accessible platform.
Yeah. Are you going to talk about satellite imaging too?
We will get into that, of course.
Okay. All right. And I'll wait on my questions there.
Perfect. Again, now we've talked about getting that visibility and understanding, hopefully a soil test and all these other things about our actual soil that we're growing in. And again, there's a lot of data on in tests that's been done about water's interaction with soil and what field capacity, saturation, water holding, so on and so forth. And just thinking about Western Fresno County, where I will spend a lot of my time, and there's maybe 70,000 acres of pistachios being grown alone in Fresno County. There's clay loams, clays, Pinochi loams. There tends to be heavier soils out there from a texture standpoint. And so, if I just obligatory just pick 1.5 inches of available water holding capacity per foot of soil, and I have a 3-foot root zone on a tree, I'm picking some things out here, and say that there was 6.12 inches of rainfall collection from that weather station that I was talking about, because I pulled the number. I told you we got about 6 inches in this area. If I do 3 foot and I got 1.5 inches per foot of available water, I now have 4.5 inches of plant available water sitting there ready to be used. This is important because, again, it gives you the confidence to start building that spring irrigation plan, maybe giving you the opportunity to defer some of that. What does it look like on a soil moisture chart? We have some other views that are, I'll say, unique to our software offering, but from a straight line perspective, no pun intended, you can see the areas that I circled here. This was a rain event that happened this off season, just one specific event where you can see water or moisture increase down to 20 inches and really significantly down to 16 inches. And so with that visibility, we know that again, moisture has been added, and through, I'll say, measurements throughout the year, seeing how much water we put on during an irrigation event and seeing the change in these numbers, now we can quantify what is each zone hold from a water perspective and run the numbers backwards essentially and say, well, okay, Richard, we have this much water available for our crop. Let's see how far we can go. And that's going to depend on a few things. And I'll hop into this real quick. So going back to stage one, if we're talking about the spring time frame, April and half of May have an expected, there's that water again, use of 3.5 inches or near that. Richard's question to me as his water manager would be, can I go this amount of time without irrigating? And I will say, it depends. How much water does your soil hold? Did we go through that process and get that figured out? Hopefully, if you're working with us, the answer is yes. And then I'm going to say, how healthy is your soil? Because you got a soil test and we understand what those influences will be on water availability. And then my other question to Richard's going to be, how much of a crunch are you in? If you say, yeah, I'm still going to get some district water, or I still have good groundwater, or I have 7 wells, which, this is an extreme case, but I have 7 wells and then I'm not worried if 5 of them go down because I'll be A-okay. It depends. If you have $1 million check coming, do you need to be on the top ramen budget? Probably not. But most of us don't have the $1 million check. And now limiting how much of the top ramen we go for, I think is going to be really important, just to kind of put it in perspective. I talked about that link earlier in the research done by the UC, Dr. Goldhammer. There are other methods to save water for reduced deficit irrigation that kind of take place in stage 2. I didn't even put them up here because I don't want to get into that conversation today. I think that that's something that needs to be done directly with growers and really understanding and dialing in what stage the crop's at. What stage is your soil at? Because I don't want to go this entire spring without irrigating and drain the soil profile if I'm depending on, I'll say, 1 well to limp us through the rest of the season. Because if I drain the reserve or drain the gas tank and now the fuel pump doesn't work, we're going to have a problem. And so that's kind of my perspective as a manager.
Yeah, interesting, right? Because it's part of your experience too that counts here. It's not just data. It is some
Absolutely.
experience as well.
Absolutely. And again, that's where that qualified certified professional comes in to hopefully say, Richard, based on, how much risk exposure do we want? This is probably what we should do going forward. But maybe instead of taking all of that 4.5 inches of water we were talking about, maybe we take 2 inches. Okay, well, how many hours of pumping did we not just do? How much water did we not take out of the ground? And how much labor did we save by not running those irrigation events? And how much money did we not pay the utilities for running that pump? There's a lot of positives that add up really quick just on saving 2 inches of water. Or that water was $1,000 an acre foot on the open market if we have to buy it. And it was 2 inches times your 100 acres or 300 acres, or keep adding the numbers. There's a number to be found there. An example, again, of using this data, this is where, we didn't irrigate 1 year until May 9th on a pistachio block. Again, based on all of these discussions, how much water do we have? How much water are we going to need? What's our well situation like? What's our district allocation situation like? And how much risk and exposure are we willing to take? And this was a sit down and conversation that was created, data that was reviewed, experience that was applied. And then we were able to get through the entire season last year because we have 2 wells and we felt comfortable with that. And that's what we did.
Yeah. Hey, Corey, we got a question about this soil water budgeting applied chart here.
Yeah.
This is soil moisture at 8 inches, 12 inches, 16, 20, right?
Yeah.
And so, all right, so the top blue is the sum of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's wondering here why would the top be red, but the area right below it green?
Yeah, good question. That's actually just it's just a differential color. It's not correlative to and great point that green is good or red is bad or blue is in the middle. Not like some of the satellite stuff we'll talk about. This is just saying that this particular line is such, and that's why, again, hopefully with good resolution, we can see the peaks and valleys of kind of the water applied. It goes up, and then the water gets used, and then the water gets applied, and then it gets used. So no, it has no correlative effect on the 8 inches less water than the 12 inch and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
Great question though. And so again, you caught me early on the satellite stuff, but this is a little more, I'll say, color sensitive, but also good. One thing that's unique, deploying satellite imagery and what we offer with our partner AgroLogix through our JaneLogix software, it really gives you that final piece of confidence. And for me as a manager or somebody who doesn't live on site or covers large areas of land as an advisor, I can really feel confident in the water budget. And I say that because we're using satellite imaging to give us an idea of the vigor and the water use of the crop, but we're using water functions and AgroLogix data to pull through and look at crop water use, ETC, and then also look at the uniformity of that water use. And each week you're getting this calculation and an image update. So for every single week of the crop year, and I'll just say calendar year, but from a crop year standpoint, how much water am I using and how uniformly am I using it? And with vigor, what's going on in my field? Are my trees progressing, regressing, indifferent? It just really allows me to sit back and say, what did we do and what effect did it have? And what did we do could not be doing anything. Sometimes it's not applying water. Sometimes it is applying water. So that's really important to understand. Gives you that ultimate view. And again, can easily be looked at on your phone, desktop, all those apps that we talked about right there in your JaneLogix portal. It's included with your JaneLogix subscription up to 80 acres. Or as a standalone service, you can just buy access to satellite imaging for $4 per acre annually. So again, you don't have to invest in all of that other stuff if you don't want to.
Yeah, so this is cool because I can get satellite imaging almost anywhere, but to have it in JaneLogix, right? A tool to actually do something with it is really valuable. And I think at $4 per acre annually, that's like 33 cents a day or something ridiculously, or 33 cents a month.
It's
Yeah,
really easy.
yeah, it's a little bit more than a penny a day.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask was, don't you have a promotion going right now on this?
I'll let you take more of that one. I would say that I'm promoting it every day by just speaking with my growers, because again, I look at the price on that, and I think that everybody should be doing it. I mean, I know we've done it with turf and other management customers also, as far as what they do. The product is reliable, it's easy to use, and again, it's effective for people like myself on the move.
Yeah. So, and I just loaded on the website the other day. That's why I knew this.
Yeah.
A 90-day free trial for people to sign up. No credit card required, but you can get satellite imaging and Jane Logic for 3 months for no charge. So
That's incredible. No,
great
I
deal.
mean, that right there speaks to, I think, our confidence level and what we're providing. And again, as somebody who manages for a lot of people and have to, a lot of people depend on, I'm very happy with what it's done. And it's validated some of the things that we've tried from a water management perspective.
Right. And if I think of, $20,000-$30,000 of trees in an acre of pistachios, less than a penny a day, or right at a penny a day for that insurance and being able to see what's happening, it's so worth it.
Absolutely. And when I talk about kind of what it's validated and what it's done with some of the things we've seen, I recently attended the UC Extension's Pistachio update meeting. They do an excellent job of providing research. I think there was 4 of us from Jane that were there that day, kind of taking it in and listening to the speakers who have a ton of experience and shared some really great research. I wanted to share something that has been, I'll say, out for 3 to 4 years now, and it's some research that's still, again, ongoing, but super interesting from Dr. Zachariah from the UC Extension. It's again another opportunity to make some significant impacts on long-term production for pistachios in the valley, just based on water use, and kind of taking, I'll say, a wider lens look at it. I just kind of threw ETO data from one of our weather stations for last year, for the entire year. And then you'll see a column there for the original crop coefficients, which are kind of the long-standing, kind of understood ones. And then there's this new research that's being done, and kind of what those crop coefficients look like. And then kind of multiplying it out, because you take ETO times KC to get your ETC, or your crop water use. There's another layer of granularity that can be applied to this to make it a little bit finer. But if you just take it from a macro look, you can see maybe 9 inches of water savings on a mature crop. Now that's also assuming, almost 48 inches of crop consumption on the original side of things. But also last year was a tough year and a warm year. Again, I think this is another unique opportunity to say, hey, the research community is looking at this, and this is what the crop's using based on great efforts and great technologies on their end. Now we can take that satellite data and kind of check ourselves in our fields individually and start applying all of this data and then running it through Jane Logic and then balancing the equation, saying I've applied this much, the research is saying this, my satellite's saying that, and now you kind of have this three-pronged approach or 3D lens to really look at how much water is being used and how much am I applying.
Yeah. Well, that's a significant change with the new research. That's a significant reduction in water.
100%. And again, if we look at this and we say, maybe some are a little high and some are a little low, and we continue to refine it. Again, going back to the conversation earlier, say it's even as small as 2 inches in difference. Well, we just talked about maybe trying to save 2 inches on the front end. And now we've saved 2 inches on the back end with new research methods. Now it's 4 inches on that 40-inch budget we talked about. That's 10%.
Yeah.
And 10% at $1,000 an acre foot times however many acres is a huge economic impact for our growers. So yes. I'm really, really optimistic about that opportunity.
Yeah, significant enough to make me pay attention, that's for sure.
And that's my hope. So anybody who's sat through my presentations before knows I love summaries. The Cliff Notes version, if you just showed up, pistachios can be grown in marginal soils and in areas with lower water security in general. Kind of that, I'll say the Madeira South is the lower end of the water security side of the valley. And so drip irrigation is the overwhelming choice for growers growing pistachios. Double line drip irrigation with either inline or button drippers. I know maybe 3 or 4 pistachio orchards I could actually take you to, Richard, that don't have double line drip. So again, it's that popular, and again, kind of makes the most sense for applying water on some of this ground. We just talked about that new research that shows that pistachios may be using less water than originally studied, just due to new advances in technology. And obviously, from applying technology to your farm, it's capable of saving water today. When I think about it as a water manager, I got to quantify the soil moisture amount. I got to verify that plant water use with satellite imaging and verify the plant response to what we're doing. I got to schedule my irrigation events better. And then, as we talked about earlier, on some of this ground that may not even be marginal, but just may be locked up due to other things, I got to use surfactants because I got to maximize that water. You're using something in your spray tank mixes to maximize the chemistry that you're applying to your plant. Why wouldn't you do it to your water?
So, wow, Corey, this has really been this wasn't a quick guide to water management for pistachios. This is the real deal. This is everything we needed. And it's so generous of you to share all this with us. It's amazing what we have learned in the last 50 minutes or so about this, but we may still have some questions, or we may need some clarifications or want some extra tips. Okay for people to contact you on that?
Absolutely. I think, I'm hopefully one of the easiest people to find in irrigation, whether it's, I think LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm actually on TikTok at this point, which I never thought I would be. But yeah, I would love if people would reach out.
Yeah, well, I'm actually one of your followers on TikTok too. So anyway, you're doing great stuff on social. You're doing great stuff for these growers. We certainly appreciate you taking time to spend with us today and move through this. We'll put Corey's contact information in the email we send out today of this recording that we send to everybody who signs up for these trainings. I want to say thank you to the viewers for spending a little bit of your day with us. Remember, you can see all our trainings on our website at janesusa.com/trainings. And we're also wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, right? We strip out the audio, put it into a podcast. And I just love to think that there's people working today, driving today to jobs, and improving their knowledge of water management, helping to conserve water. That helps me get up every day. And I know it does you too, Corey. So anyway, thanks to all the viewers. Thanks again to you, Corey. And we'll see everybody here back next week with another couple sessions. So thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Richard.